and we look forward to enriching perspectives that they will share. To all our attendees, thank you for joining us. Your participation reflects a shared commitment to advancing a resilient, transparent, and inclusive commodities market in Nigeria and across Africa. We anticipate an insightful and productive session ahead. And I remain Eberechukwu Okonkwo, the Acting Company Secretary of the Lagos Commodities and Futures Exchange. Thank you.
Welcome to the Lagos Commodities and Futures Exchange, your trusted partner in the commodities market. Let me take you on a journey to learn more about us. Come with me.
LCFE is a fully licensed commodities exchange regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission to facilitate the trading of the 4 asset classes, which are agricultural commodities, solid minerals, oil and gas, and currency.
LCFE is not just a trading platform. We are an exchange. We drive the Nigerian economy and the commodities ecosystem. What we do is to stimulate and catalyze sustainable growth in Nigeria, West Africa, and the whole of Africa. We support innovation, sustainable financing, and investment for stakeholders and investors of the commodities ecosystem.
LCFE provides access to global markets for commodity traders. LCFE ensures that the commodities that trade on the floor are quality, of good standard, and are certified across all asset classes. LCFE ensures and provides access to capital market financing for commodity activities. LCFE provides and ensures that there are diverse investment opportunities locally, internationally, regionally, across the commodities ecosystem.
We have 14 approved commodities by the Securities and Exchange Commission, bringing us to 2 of our key products, the Eco Gold Coin and Eco Rice.
The Eco Gold Coin is the first physical gold asset to be listed and traded on any exchange in Nigeria. It was mined in Osun State, and July 2022 it was launched by the Governor of Lagos State himself, His Excellency Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, at 42,500 naira per gram. And guess what? It is currently trading at 98,000 naira per gram. That is a whopping 130.59% ROI for early and smart investors.
Eco Rice is an investment-backed commodity contract backed by a partnership between LCFE and the Lagos State government to enhance local rice production, boost food security, and drive economic sustainability.
These 2 products are just a fraction of the SEC-approved investment opportunities on LCFE.
Now come with me as I take you to explore our departments and introduce you to our dedicated professionals that ensures dedicated and seamless trading for you. Remember, we talk about Eco Rice. Now, I know some of you are wondering where and how to redeem your Eco Rice contract after trading on the floor of the exchange. If you purchase your Eco Rice contract and you are wondering how to pick up, here is one of our redemption centers where you can conveniently pick up your Eco Rice at the heart of CMS Marina, Lagos State. Displayed on the screen are some of our other recognized redemption centers that you can pick up your Eco Rice contract.
And that is not all. Are you a warehouse owner, a logistic company, an aggregator, exporter or importer of all kinds of commodity, a vault owner, capital market operator, commodity refining or processing company? There is room for partnership and collaboration with LCFE.
To contact us, visit our website lcfe.ng or call the numbers displayed on the screen. You can also send an email to info@lcfe.ng. At LCFE, we don't just trade commodities. We create opportunities, drive growth, and empower investors.
So when you trade with LCFE, you trade smart.
And you gain global access to boundless opportunities
that transforms commodities into wealth,
thereby making LCFE your gateway to certified commodity and capital market financing.
So when next you think about LCFE, don't forget it is the home of commodities.
All right. Welcome back from the quick commercial break. And on this note, I would welcome my MD and CEO of Lagos Commodities and Futures Exchange to give his insightful remark. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Today, I'm an investment banker, and at the same time, I'm a farmer. And at the same time, we're trying to align with the new Gen Z youths on how to onboard them for them to participate in the commodities ecosystem. I'm very happy today with the theme that we're looking at today, navigating the future of commodities trading, understanding the ISA's role in shaping the commodities ecosystem. The ISA 2025 is a very, very key document that will drive the enabling environment and the regulatory framework, for us to be able to grow that ecosystem, that's the capital market ecosystem, and particularly the commodities ecosystem. Before I start, I would just like to observe all the protocols. So I'd like to greet everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues from the Securities and Exchange Commission, Capital Market Solicitors Association, capital market participants, our invaluable partners from Lagos Commodities and Futures Exchange, dedicated commodity producers, traders, revered financial institutions, and all stakeholders present today. I want to observe our protocol. Thank you for being here today. It is with profound purpose and immense pleasure that I welcome you today to mark a pivotal moment for Nigeria's financial landscape, the formal introduction and into operationalization of the Investment and Securities Act 2025. More than just updated the legislation, this act is a visionary blueprint designed to catapult our capital market into a new era of dynamism, transparency, and global competitiveness. It embodies our collective commitment to fostering a robust investment climate, enhancing investor confidence, deepening market liquidity, and spurring sustainable economic growth across all sectors of the economy in Nigeria. So as we gather today, acknowledging the significant strides already made in strengthening our financial markets, I must specifically commend the Securities and Exchange Commission for its remarkable improvement in responsiveness to regulatory approvals. This dedication to efficiency clearly signals our drive towards a more nimble, effective, and regulatory environment, a spirit precisely amplified by the ISA 2025. Now, for the imperative for change in commodities, within the expansive framework of market transformation, Nigeria's commodities sector holds unique and unparalleled potential for economic diversification and self-sufficiency, notably contributing over 90% of the nation's export and total trade. Despite this, the vast wealth in agriculture, solid minerals, and energy has long been constrained by informal structures, inefficiencies, and devastating price volatility. We've seen the direct impacts: farmers facing uncertain returns, supply chains riddled with operational hurdles, and market participants left vulnerable to dramatic swings in the ecosystem. Past events like the 2008 oil crash, where many suffered due to lack of hedging tools, and recent fluctuations such as the 50-kilogram bag of rice dropping to a near half-year price of 58,000, 70,000 due to global supply dynamics and influx via the Republic of Benin, underscores how critical it is for us to address these systemic vulnerabilities, to the extent that if the global community should sneeze, we should not always be catching a cold when that happens. But the ISA has brought up a new dawn for us for commodities. This is precisely where the Investment and Securities Act 2025 steps in. This act is a strategic answer to these challenges and a blueprint for unlocking the full potential of our commodity sector. For the commodities market specifically, the ISA marks a paradigm shift. Some of the items that I saw and I did a review on in the ISA, I'd just like to share my opinion. We'll talk to the regulatory clarity and predictability. We will speak about the enhanced market infrastructure. We'll speak about robust investor protection, which is very, very key, and the sophisticated risk mitigation that's in this new ISA. And lastly, for me, I'll speak about the facilitation of investment and growth across the value chains. These are things that the ISA will support. To take the first one, the regulatory clarity and predictability. The Act provides a comprehensive legal framework for trading, warehousing in particular, clearing and settlement of commodities. It removes ambiguities, fosters greater certainty, and does become a powerful magnet for both local and international investors seeking a secure and predictable environment to which they want to operate. And investor confidence in any environment is very, very key. The second aspect that I mentioned is the issue of the enhanced market infrastructure. The ISA 2025 directly supports the development and strengthening of modern commodities exchanges, like the Lagos Commodity and Futures Exchange, LCF, which serve as the engine of structured trades, which is what we're doing, to be able to move transactions from the OTC point of view over the counter to structured trades. The ISA promises and promotes standardized contracts, rigorous grading, verifiable warehousing facilities, envisioning a future where all commodities meet internationally recognized standards, facilitating seamless transactions. Our commitment to quality assurance under this new framework is further underscored by collaboration with the global verification bodies, exemplified by initiatives like lab tests to the Bureau Veritas, which was done with the daily member firms very recently. The third item that I would like to speak to briefly is the robust investor protection, which is very key, because when the investors are protected, it builds the market confidence. This act introduces more rigorous disclosure requirements, empowers sophisticated market surveillance tools, ensures fair trading practices for investors, whether large institutions or small producers looking to sell their harvest on the structured market. The ISA 2025 provides unparalleled dispute resolution mechanism to resolve should there be any issue available there. The fourth item is the sophisticated risk mitigation. Crucially, the ISA 2025 enables and regulates advanced risk management tools, ensuring our farmers and large-scale traders are no longer solely at the mercy of global price swings alone. By facilitating robust derivatives trading and making hedging instruments more accessible and regulated, the Act safeguards livelihoods and investments from unforeseen price downturns or sudden spikes, likely applying lessons learned from the 2008 oil crash, Noble Group, and Agritrade International. The fifth item is the issue of facilitating investments across the global value chain. The ISA also will be assisting by fostering trust, predictability. The ISA invites significant domestic and international capital markets to invest across the entire commodity value chain, from upstream production and sustainable mining through the midstream processing, efficient logistics, and secure housing to downstream trading and distribution. This includes strategically integrating infrastructure like the cold chain into our space, linking it directly to the markets such as the Kara markets, which is for livestock, to ensure efficient, spoilage-free delivery. This holistic approach is poised to create millions of jobs, substantially enhance value addition, bolster food security, and accelerate industrial growth. For this ISA 2025, which is very, very novel and very, very good at this particular stage, we have, for the first time, seen where we have legal backing to support an ecosystem that's been contributing almost 90% to our GDP in the last 70 years. It also empowers the facilitators, the operators in this ecosystem, to be able to move faster, further, and more efficiently to grow the ecosystem. The federal government has signed this into law. The National Assembly have deemed it fit to put it together. It's now left for us to look at it, see the opportunities available in this law and this enabling environment for us to be able to work on. Now, what is the role of the stakeholders and the path forward for us to be able to look at this? The success of this landmark legislation, particularly in the commodity space, hinges on our collective commitment, like I've mentioned. On the side of the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission will continue to play a central role in the enforcement and market development, upholding the spirit of the Act. For the exchanges that are the SROs, particularly the LCFE, we are going to be the engines of this transformation, providing platforms and fostering innovation that will drive the trades. And for these, the operators, like the banks and financial institutions, they must now fully embrace the commodity financing and development of tailored derivative products to be able to grow that market that has to actually be sustaining our economy, that is the commodities market. And for the producers and processors, I believe that they must seize the opportunity to formalize, to be able to standardize and access better markets to obtain fair prices for their hard work. Standardization is key, where we have the issue of quality control to be able to be a benchmark with global best standards. Because if we don't standardize to global best standards, we will be able to do intra-trade alone. But if we want to access the global demand chain, for us to be able to be part of the supply chain, we will have to be able to regularize ourselves to the requirements, the standards, and the quality control that's required for us to be able to access the global chain. Now we have the government agencies that have signed off. They will continue to provide supportive policies and critical infrastructure to support this infrastructural development in the commodity space. The IIC 2025, having looked through it, powerfully declared Nigeria's commitment to leverage in its natural endowment for economic diversification, which we have been mentioning for the past 20 years, that we want to move from a mono-income economy to a diversified economy. This creates an opportunity for us to be able to move towards a diversified economy, for the capital market to be able to participate heavily in this space, for an investment banking space to be able to participate, so that we're able to diversify our income stream, both at the federal level, the state level, the private sector level, and move towards self-sufficiency. And this will all be urging all stakeholders to foster a more efficient, transparent, and resilient commodities markets. With these reforms hold a great promise for the capital market, contingent on enhanced SEC collaboration with other stakeholders, including Central Bank of Nigeria and the PENCOM, National Pensions Commission. Such cooperation is vital for systemic risk management, liquidity, financial stability, and this will drive regulatory consistency, reduce cost, and boost investor confidence and protection during the implementation. Because when these institutions are playing a role in this ecosystem, it will make it easier for other participants in the global space to have more confidence to be able to participate in this space. With these collaborations, which are very, very crucial for advancing our key reforms and promoting the widespread adoption of warehouse receipts as loan collateral, establishing clear registration for issuers of investment contracts, ensuring regulatory clarity for virtual and digital assets, and enabling regulated entities such as banks, pension funds to participate in the digital asset space. By the time we start putting a bite to what I've been signing into law in ISA, whereby warehouse receipts will be bankable, will be acceptable as instruments, will be acceptable as loan collateral, then we'll be able to start supporting the ecosystem that has been supporting our own economy in the last 60 years. Then for widespread market adoption and effective implementation of the IIC 2025, we are looking at the targeted awareness and special programs are essential. And that will be done now and subsequently after this period. So furthermore, the successful implementation of the outlook require clear rules, which we are working on, updated policies to bring policies up to date and guidelines, strategic planning. Now is the opportune moment to refresh this roadmap by incorporating new initiatives and trends, thereby unlocking the significant growth, transparency, and increased participation in Nigeria's capital market. The exchange takes pride in its substantial contribution to the development of this act. We played a major role in it. There's a lot of definition that's changed in that act that allows now for so many commodities to be defined properly. In the previous act, commodities were supposed to be produce, which was focused on agriculture a lot. Now commodities has been spread now to go into solid mineral, to go into the refined petroleum products, to go into gas, to go into digital assets, to go into electricity, and to go into so many other things that are defined as commodities in other parts of the world. Now we can play that role in Nigeria too. And investment banking space also will be given an opportunity, and we, the operators, to be able to start generating new instruments backed by this law that's been given to us to create the proper enabling environment and the regulatory framework for us to grow the ecosystem. And also for the international community to see that whatever they're coming to do in the commodity space now is backed by law and also is regulated by law. On the other side of it also is the fact that it now gives a lot of power to the Commission SEC to be able to regulate, to penalize, discipline, and bring more sanity into the ecosystem. We're also very happy that with this ISA now, the Commission is now pushing further to make sure that Ponzi schemes are pushed out of the way, and multi-layer investment schemes that are not registered are pushed out of the way, so that unsuspecting investors don't lose their money. And there are very, very stiff penalties now if you are not registered to be a participant in the ecosystem. I start trading or participating in an ideal situation whereby the Commission sees that you are not a registered institution or individual participating in the space. There are very, very stiff penalties to that. And for all the people that are here, I'm sure that we're all in compliance with these new requirements. And if we're not, I think it's an opportunity for us today to look at that act, see where we can apply ourselves positively, see where we can caution ourselves, and see where we can grow ourselves. So today, I want to employ everybody that let us embrace this new era with enthusiasm, determination, and a shared vision. Together, under the enlightened guidance of the Investment and Securities Act of 2025, we will build a commodities market that is not only the pride of Nigeria, but a beacon of Africa and beyond. I thank you very much today, and I wish everybody a very, very fruitful deliberation today. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, MD, for your insightful remarks. And up next is our first presenter. But before she comes up, I would like to read out her profile. Mabel Okereke is a partner at Babalaki & Co., leading the Financial Service and Securities Group. She holds a master's degree in international business law from the prestigious Queen Mary's University of London, a member of the Loan Market Association and the International Bar Association, amongst others. She currently serves as the Secretary of the Capital Market Solicitors Association and was previously the Secretary of the Board of the NBA, Institute of Continuing Legal Education, as well as Secretary Electoral Committee of the Nigerian Bar Association. Me, as she is fondly called within the firm, represents both domestic and foreign lenders, issuers, borrowers, trustees, custodians, to mention a few within the capital market ecosystem, and in various finance transactions, including equities, debt instruments, commodities-backed instruments, trade finance, vessel asset finance, sustainable project finance, construction and tourism-linked relay finance. She recently advised on the $200 million cross-border trade finance. She's advising issuers and transaction advisors raising capital for the recapitalization of financial institutes and other capital raised in commodities transaction. So on this note, I would like to welcome Mabel Okereke. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ebere, and thank you, LCFE, for having me. I'll crave your indulgence to stand on the existing protocol that has been established by Amiable MD and CEO of the exchange. I wear two hats, Secretary of the CMSA and also a partner within Babalaki & Co. However, my thoughts and my conversation around here are some of the reflections I've had since the ISA was passed into law. I had the opportunity also to be at the Senate for the public hearing and also to review that document when it was in a draft stage. And so I feel deeply honored to be part of this conversation and to be within this August gathering, speaking to the ISA vis-a-vis the commodities exchange. I'd like to also thank my colleagues that have also helped me in putting my slides together and us giving some thoughts and conversation about the ISA and how it impacts our markets. And I'd like to thank Philip Igbinovia, Wisdom Obilo, Miss Oma, Cynthia, and the rest of my team within BNC here for the support they've given to me. Without much ado, I'll be sharing my slides and to just pick a few around the provisions within the ISA and how this is shaping transactions within this ecosystem. I'd like to mention that the Investments and the Securities Act 2025 had repealed effectively the previous ISA, that's a 2007 ISA. The old one had 316 sections. It was divided into 18 parts, while this new law has 358 sections and it's divided into 18 parts as well. Effectively, we have 42 new sections under this new act. However, what has happened is within the new act, we find out that some provisions that were in the old law was expunged, didn't make it into these new ones, whereas some ones that were retained were further refined and written in a way that it's very clear and devoid of ambiguities. Effectively, what this new law has done is to align with the IOSCO expectations for regulatory agencies, for regulatory regimes within the capital market. The IOSCO has three objectives, as you all know, and within any capital market, it's extremely important that investors' interests are adequately protected. That is the only way we can guarantee foreign direct investment into our economy. If investors' interests are not protected, it affects drastically a decline in what we can achieve within the market. And then our fair, efficient, transparent market goes without saying that it also enhances the reputability of any market, then for the prevention of system risk. Now, how has this regulation been able to achieve these objectives? The revised capital market plan, that's a 2015 to 2025, had one primary objective, and that is to make our Nigerian capital markets the most modern, efficient, and internationally competitive in Africa. This is meant to be the catalyst for economic growth and development in our country. If you had a market that is efficient, it will boost the economy in source of liquidity and in the ways in which capital formation is achieved within the sector. Now, that document had four themes. One, to contribute to national economy, the market development and innovations, competitiveness and market regulations and oversight. I had spoken to this last year during the MBA SBL, and we were looking at how the capital market was driving growth within the larger economy. I then thought about it then that it was 2024. How close are we to achieving the targets that were set in those documents? It seems, to my mind, I think the singular act in ensuring that the ISA 2025 was passed into law recently is a huge step in achieving this goal. This regulation, as you know, it strengthens the previous existing framework, as it were, within this ecosystem. It's recognized asset class, it's embraced technologically frontally, and then it's also ensuring that that goal that we have to achieve a $1 trillion economy is actually actualizable. Next slide, please. The 28 objectives in that document, 1, 2, 3, 4 of it has been accomplished by this singular act. The first is the 8th objective, which is to create an enabling structure for digital asset trading. As we go on into this presentation, you will find out that we now have a framework that is recognized within the ISA for digital asset trading, virtual trading as well. Then it also ensured that we will have a thriving ecosystem within the commodities market, and then also to advocate the development of the agricultural virtual value chain. It also had a goal to develop regulations to facilitate the market and establish an enabling framework for digital asset trading, and then improve market oversight, and then enhance the dispute resolutions process. Going through that document, I found out that not only was it detailed, but it also gave clarity as to things to expect within the system. Next, please. So for the key provisions, all of these key provisions tell that the provisions that we have right now under the ISA achieve these goals effectively. And it'll be nice to see what the new scoreboards will be like. But I mean, this is from my own end, my observations, that in having passed into law this document, this piece of legislation, we've been able to move and advance incredibly and in a lot of ways to achieving that securities regulation within our market that is in accordance with global standard and is expected by the IOSCO as well. So just very quickly, under the powers and the regulatory oversight of the previous slide. Under the regulatory powers of the SECs, we find out that these powers have been expanded. The SEC has a whole lot more regulatory powers. It will place sanctions, and it's also undertaken to provide rules that would give effect to the new provisions within the ISA as we have it today. There's a classification of securities exchange now. We've provided the provisions in our slides. I'll make this available later, so that when you look at them, it gives you a quick reference to where you would find them, and then also the explanatory notes to them, some of them within the definition section. So I won't dwell too much on them so that I can finish this within the short time and then yield to the next speaker. There's also now within the Act a full section from sections 41 that covers the regulation of financial marketing infrastructures. You also have the unclaimed dividend. There's a provision in now. It has a statutory backing on how unclaimed dividends for public companies will be treated. There is this compulsory use now for legal entity identifiers under the Act. Now Ponzi scheme is criminalized, and the SEC can now prosecute offenders by obtaining powers, a fiat from the Attorney General to do this. There's an access to the market for the state and local government, as the supranationals, which is recognized under that law as well. The jurisdiction of the IST is clear. There's a lot more that goes on under the new Act now in terms of the appointment and the recommendations and the appointments for the IST. The composition has been increased. The appointment of members will now be by the president upon the recommendation of the Minister for Finance, and then the jurisdiction of the IST. That in itself is a whole conversation which we will not be unpacking here, but suffices to just identify it as some of the new things that we have right now in the ISA. There's also the recognition of digital assets and investment contracts within that Act. Next, please. So for powers of the ISA, the SEC under the ISA. It's, as you all know, it regulates the securities exchange, the commodities exchange, and now the provision for the digital asset exchange and other market value venues. The thing about the ISA is there are provisions that allows the SEC to make rules in addition to this primary legislation and the expansions that we have in that law to bring clarity when the need arises. So we see that as time goes on, that SEC will come out with new rules, and participants within this market will always be required to engage. So we think that in time to come, a lot of these rules will be coming out, and we'll be watching out for them. There's also the registration and the regulations for online forex trading and activities. Like I earlier mentioned, this was really a bold move in the right direction. I mean, it's been said that technology is an enabler, and we've seen a whole lot of this happening in other jurisdictions, and the approach that has been adopted in those jurisdictions that has enabled a growth within their economy for trading in currencies that are virtual. Also, there's a registration for collateral managers and warehouses. This sits squarely within the commodities ecosystem. Within the commodities ecosystem. For mergers and acquisition, the SEC still performs certain functions. The FCCPC will perform a whole lot more. Then there's the powers of the SEC to intervene in the management and the control of public companies. The SEC can remove directors, can make directives directly impacting on the management of the public companies that is regulated under its regulatory purview. This is to ensure that the investors' interests are adequately protected. It can also appoint directors. Sorry, there's something blocking this side. I can't see this. It can also appoint independent directors. Thank you. Into the boards of public companies and place directors or for public companies under probations when it considers reasonable. But the interesting thing that I found out that in as much as SEC has all of these powers, those provisions were clear as to fair hearing. The SEC will not act without giving the parties involved their adequate rights to fair hearing. So presentations will be made. SEC would not act in impunity. I mean, the law, as much as I have seen, makes provisions for this. You'd hear, oh, with regards is hard to fair hearing. I saw a bit of those fair hearing provisions when I went through some of the new provisions as it relates to the expansion of the powers of the SEC. Then for Ponzi schemes, it's taken a very hard stance on prohibiting Ponzi schemes, and there are sanctions for it. And those penalties, I was looking at it, those penalties are not just either or, there are monetary sanctions, and there are also imprisonments if found guilty of such infractions under the Act. The SEC can also obtain to be of the SEC rules. This is important because IOSCO requires at all times that securities commissions are able to enforce adequately within the market. That is one way to ensure that investors' interests are protected. So yes, SEC has powers and can obtain these records. This will aid in the investigations and can protect and prevent a systemic risk within the market. The power to seize property and seal up premises of persons illegally carrying capital market operations and investment schemes also has been granted to the SEC under the Act. The provisions are there. We just of structural reforms have been undertaken under the new ISA. I earlier mentioned now that you have the composite exchange and the non-composite exchange. The composite exchange are those that allow for multiple trading, listing, and quotations of securities, whereas the non-composite ones are those that allow just one asset class to be traded on the exchange. There's also a provision for the alternative trade system, which is more like a virtual system. And there's also sections 41. Then the management of systemic risk also is being covered under the ISA. There's a recognition for commodities market within the ISA now. Before now, what was obtainable was that the SEC had provisions under the SEC rules, rules 227, applicable for purposes of registering a commodities market. But what has now happened is from section 224 of the ISA, there are elaborate provisions of what to expect, how a commodities market can be set up, and what the requirements are. The warehouse receipt system has also been introduced under the ISA, and there's been an expansion of the definitions. Interestingly, the definitions under the Act, I checked. For instance, the definition of securities under the Act, there were some parts of it that were deleted and new parts included. Some were merged into one, and then it just brought a whole lot more clarity. It's less devoid of ambiguity as we have it. And it will be nice to see how some of these provisions will be interpreted in our law courts. Thank you. Can we proceed? Now, the commodities ecosystem. This is really where we want to spend a little bit more time. Is the legal framework within the ISA for the commodities market is a whole lot more elaborate, and it provides clarity. There are mandatory provisions. I repeat, mandatory provisions within the ISA, and the use of shall pervades these sections within the ISA. It talks about registration requirements, what are required. Before now, like I said, the SEC rules had those provisions. Also, the SEC makes prescription as to what the share capital will be for the registration of the commodities exchange, and then the mandatory requirements, and then the rules that should be made. Now, it appears to me now that exchanges at the moment will be reviewing their rules to see how it will be brought in compliance to the new provisions of the ISA. It sets out what should be done, how sanctions should be meted out, what is allowed and unacceptable. That should be within the rules under the new ISA Act. There's also the appointment of the CEO and principal officers of the Commodities Exchange, which requires prior approval of the SEC. Yes, please. Yes, I talked about the mandatory provisions and the powers of SEC vis-a-vis the commodities market. I was going to say also that part of the powers which the SEC has over the commodities exchange as we speak is to ensure that the rules are in compliance with the ISA. The rules should speak to when exclusions will be made to persons that are of bad behavior, persons unscrupulous, that has failed to meet fair and equitable practices when it comes to commodities transactions. Also, if and when the commodities exchange in particular fails to deal with such issues, the statute grants the SEC powers to intervene in such situations and prescribe or sanction such things. But like I said, SEC would always investigate and will give both the license holder within the commodities market and also the commodities exchange the right to fair hearings to make their presentation. So yes, the SEC at such points will intervene. Also, the rules are to make provisions as to when there will be expulsion, suspensions, and disciplinary measures will be taken, which are much more elaborate. It sets out certain things that should be done within the rules. The definition of commodities has been expanded. The definition of securities have been expanded. What are tradable instruments have also been expanded. And all of these are reflective of the forward-looking nature and the compliance with global standards as expected by the IOSCO within the SEC, within the ISA. And this is an effective step that has been taken by the SEC. Thank you. The next one, please. Moving along to the warehouse receipt system, I feel quite gladdened because on our side, we are increasingly seeing a demand of instructions on our end from players within the agro sector, different sectors that sit squarely within the commodities system, and they try to raise funds. In raising funds, for instance, from the agro sector, we've done some of those transactions and we're still on some of them right now. I am delighted that the warehouse receipt system is now recognized within the ISA. The warehouse was defined, and I'll dwell a bit on this, and that's why I thought that my team members should put out this definition or within this slide. So the warehouses are defined, and it says it's not just a commercial space, which is typically what we're used to as a warehouse. It now includes buildings, it includes tanks, it includes silos, it includes vessels, it also includes vaults and different structures that are approved by the SEC. So that means what is a warehouse isn't limited to what we have as it is currently within the ISA. Insofar it's suitable for storage and conditioning of commodities or building, then it would be considered as a warehouse. But at all times, the SEC will provide us guidance as to what will fit into warehouse. The commodities ecosystem. Now, for who are the warehouse operators? Warehouse operators must be registered by SEC. Registration is the primary way through which required to register, and they will they are in full compliance because the provisions are also clear as what they are required to do. And like I said, the SEC will come out with rules. It's envisaged from the wordings of the ISA. The warehouse receipts represents title documents for commodities that are stored within this warehouse, and they are issued by either the warehouse, the collateral manager, or other persons that have been permitted to issue a warehouse receipt in respect of the commodities deposited within the warehouse. For the receipt system, it's an electronic system that is maintained by the warehouse operator or a collateral management company or any other entity. I recall, I think a couple of years back, the SEC also sent us the rules for commodities management, and I think there was a whole lot also in that rule. But now the important thing is that the primary legislation within the capital market now has provisions as to this system, and it's now recognized. The collateral management company, please can no, still on that previous slide. The collateral management company also manages commodity as a collateral and is also engaged in the activities connected within this ecosystem. Next, please. So the warehouse, the way I see it, we've done a few deals where instruments are issued by the issuer. I think in one of the achievements of the ISA is having been able to codify the warehouse receipt system. While preparing for this, I took a look at what had obtained in other jurisdictions, for instance, in Kenya, in Uganda, and in how they've been able to assist not just the smallholder farmers, but the financing for even the larger farmers within the agro sector in their economy, and how it's been able to generate and deepen revenues within their economy. For us in Nigeria, we're looking to having other sources, revenue sources, and we're looking to becoming self-sufficient and self-sustaining as a nation. We're also looking to achieving food security, amongst other securities within the country. The warehouse receipt system is an important move in that direction, because now the warehouse receipts are going to be fungible and can be transferred and can be traded both in the secondary market on the commodities exchange. Well, in section 241 and 2 says that the warehouse houses will be used for storing the commodities linked to an exchange, and the warehouse operators are required to register. Warehouse says prior to registration must be suitable and there must be proper storage. This is important because the warehouse receipts have specified, as it's done in other jurisdictions, it has specifications. It's standardized. There are requirements on what a warehouse receipt should look like, and these are important to avoid disputes that may arise and occur. The ISA has lengthy provisions as to liability, what happens to the warehouse receipts in terms of insurance and what should be done. It's quite elaborate and it's commendable. Also, I think my time is getting close, but let me just finish on that part. The bearers of the issue, what it does, it shows that there is title to the assets that is stored in the warehouse, and it saves one, the farmers, the producers, two, the aggregators. On different level, it brings value within the ecosystem. It operates also as a lien on commodities deposited and proceeds of commodities in order to recoup fees and changes that are services that are rendered and supplied. Please can we move to the... So what we've done here is just to demonstrate more. So there's this smallholder farmer, ME. ME's farms grows, for purposes of illustration, cocoa, and the demand and supply will affect the prices of her commodities, cocoa in this instance. ME hasn't gotten the warehouse. She doesn't have the capacity within her farm to house the cocoa that is required. And the interesting thing is that the demand for cocoa is enormous, not just for chocolates, not just for consumption within our local market, but also within the foreign market, which she can export cocoa to. So ME Group can store, and then the warehouse operator issues this. What this does now is that smallholder farmers are able to, one, preserve their commodities, get the best value and pricing for their commodities without having to lose them. On the other side of the value chain is the aggregator, who also has aggregates for different purposes. There are off-takers on the other end of the value chain. But the thing is that within the agro sector, using this illustration, her produce is taken to the warehouse operator, who issues this warehouse receipt. The warehouse receipt also contemplates that it can be an electronic one. it needs not be a physical one that is issued. They are standardized. And then the brokers list these receipts on the exchange. The beautiful part of it is the warehouse receipts now can be used to finance and can then be used to access further facilities on those receipts. In some other jurisdictions, when we looked at it, the warehouse receipts actually are of two kinds. The ones that where you're issued the warehouse receipts, it gives you title. Then there's also another one that gives possession as a pledge, serves as a pledge. But for our purpose, we have the mono system within our laws where a warehouse receipt is issued and that receipt is tradable. Then the brokers can also list that receipt on the exchange. Now there's a price discovery and the matching system. There's a clearinghouse, there's a settlement, all of the process as we know it. All of this is now conceived within the primary legislation in the capital market. Next, please. For the impact on the market participants, there's a whole lot. There's a whole lot. And it's important to check because compliance issues are of importance in the market as we have it now. The ISA envisages that this compliance are done because the sanctions are also very stiff. Sanctions as much as 10 million and then plus not an option plus imprisonment where those infractions are found to have occurred. And then you have provisions as to disclosures, provisions as to registering, approval, seeking approvals on different levels, affecting different spaces within the market. And then you have for brokers, like holders licenses within the exchange, you're meant to comply. And then there are also operational expectations. So yes, there are lots on the end of the compliance that are required on the back of players within the market under the ISA. For market development, yes, there'll be a whole lot more. The market will see as time goes along, trading of the instruments. We'll expect to see hedging, derivatives, transactions deepen with the clarity that we have on the back of the warehouse receipts now. And there are also provisions on derivatives within the new ISA. There are also support for international and foreign investments. There's a growth. We see growth coming within the commodities markets, inclusion of the alternative market platforms and recognitions for this market transparency and the enhanced dispute resolution mechanisms are all developments that we see under the new ISA. On a final thought, like we thought about it, the definition of commodities includes vessels. That tells me we're looking at fossil fuels, crude. There's a move at the moment from fossil fuel to cleaner energy. In other clients, they're already having the conversations around renewable energies within the commodities ecosystem. The beautiful thing is that the ISA, the provisions of the ISA as to what a commodities isn't exhaustive. I think it's good that we're looking at energy transitions within our market, cleaner energies, solar power, renewables. But there's also that conversation ongoing, how renewable energy commodities plays within our ecosystem. So I think that in all, the ISA has come and the provisions are elaborate. The sanctions are also very stiff, and there are lots of compliance that are required of players within the market. On the exchange, its rules must be consistent with the provisions as it were right now under the ISA. And for players within the market also, there are various steps, registrations, and at all times adherence to the provisions of the ISA. Top of my head, the other provisions of the ISA that I have not delved into are the provisions as it speaks to insolvency. In a nutshell, the reforms within the ISA encapsulates not just the innovative reforms, the market reforms in terms of strengthening the existing laws and then strengthening the market, but also to a large extent, the innovations and then the clarity, the powers of the SEC for enforcement. The enforcement is pretty much important because right now the SEC doesn't have to wait for the law enforcement agencies. The SEC can obtain the fiat from the Attorney General and can proceed to prosecute offenders, as it were. So it's important to ensure that issues of compliance around the ISA is taken very seriously. And where you're in doubt, you're always required to consult with your in-house counsel and also seek advice from your external solicitors as players within the ecosystem. The sanctions are not just the one-off. There's a day-to-day sanctions that are recognized within the ISA, and some of them are quite mandatory. It's clear on the point that there's imprisonment and there is fine also for that purpose. And I think with this, it's a decent place to thank you once again for allowing me share my thoughts on the new ISA and for bringing me in to be part of this conversation. Thank you very much. I don't know if I'm allowed to take questions or if it's after the second speaker has finished his paper, but I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mabel, for your insightful conversation. I really learned a lot, and I believe our listeners also learned a lot from you. But yes, you're allowed to take questions and answer. And it's on this note that I would encourage anyone that has questions to drop their questions between 2 to 3 minutes in the chat box. Thank you.
It appears, yeah, I think that's the question here. And I've answered. Colin says, will the slides be shared with us after the webinar? Yes, the slides will be shared. We'll update it more and just set out those provisions where we think that you should consider perhaps for reviewing, depending on the sides where you play within the ecosystem to ensure that you're in compliance for purposes of the ISA as we speak. Yes, so I'm happy to share it. Thank you. Yes. I can also share the new ISA. In fact, we got the gazetted version of the ISA this week. So I'm happy to share a soft copy of that as well. Thank you, Betsy. I think I've exhausted the question. I think really what everyone needs for a regulation of this sort is the provisions, and it helps give clarity for compliance purposes. Crane Securities has hands up. I'm not sure if it's for purposes of questions or the questions has been taken. Okay. Crane Securities, I see that your hands are up.
All right. I think that is all we have for the question and answer section for Mabel. Thank you very much, Mabel, once again. So on this note, I would be introducing. Okay, someone's question just came in. Let's leave it for Mabel to answer. Hi, Mabel. Please, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. But we can't hear you. You are unmuted. But we can't hear you. Yes. No, we didn't hear you. Apologies, please. The speaker is having a little bit of a technical glitch, so I've advised her to rejoin so she can answer the two questions in the chat box. Thank you. All right, in order not to take so much of your time, I would like to introduce the second speaker, but that doesn't mean we would not attend to the questions. We would attend to it along the way. But either ways, I would like to introduce this second speaker. But before I bring him forth, I will read his profile. Peter Cole is an associate and team leader in the corporate commercial team of Chris Ogubanjo LP, Nigeria's premier corporate commercial firm, where he delivers innovative legal solutions, business-centric advisory, and thought leadership at the nexus of corporate commercial law, finance, and technology. With a growing track record of providing cutting-edge expertise in corporate commercial matters, Peter Cole has played leading roles in complex corporate transaction and groundbreaking deals, leveraging his emerging expertise in mergers and acquisition, capital markets, and corporate restructuring, corporate finance and securitization, blockchain, crypto and emerging technology advisory, business advisory, and regulatory compliance. An emerging thought leader, Peter Cole's speaking profile includes notable interviews granted to Arise TV News, Channels TV, Business Day newspaper, and UFM, as well as articles on notable legal platforms, including being a contributing author to the first ever private merger and acquisition comparative guide for Nigeria by Mondak. He is also a regular mentor and guest speaker at JIIPCC Academy, where he teaches budding legal minds on legal development of fintech and intellectual property. Peter Cole is a member of the Capital Market Solicitors Association, Nigerian Bar Association Sector on Business Law, Intellectual Property Law Association of Nigeria, and FinTech NGR. So on that note, I would welcome Peter Cole to give his insightful presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, moderator, for that introduction. I'd like to start by extending my appreciation to the Lagos Commodities and Futures Exchange, especially its MD CEO, Mr. Kinyakere Doluale, and the management and board of the company of the exchange, as well as to the moderator of today, who has done a fantastic job thus far holding the fort. And also, most importantly, I'd like to extend my immense appreciation personally, because I've also considerably learned a lot from our session. And I'm thinking of none other but the presenter before me, that's the highly esteemed Ms. Mabel Kereke, partner at Babalaki & Co., who delivered what I like to call an all-rounded presentation on the topic of the day, such that my task has been practically simplified and I have very little to do here. Additionally, I'd like to thank my law firm, Chris Ogubanjo LP, the partners and management for the opportunity to stand here, the approval, the support they've given to make this possible. So straight up, my presentation, while I'm trying to share the slide now, just give me a moment to do that. I'd like to clarify that my presentation is slightly different from the policy definitive and legal review that we just witnessed at the high level from Ms. Okereke earlier. As far as my presentation is concerned, this is more of an analytical and policy-driven approach to exploring innovations, the risk, the opportunities as are available with respect to the emergence of the ISA and its implications for commodities trading and the commodities exchange in Nigeria, more or less a beam light on the global perspective as well. So I'll take a ride with me for the next couple of minutes as we go through that. Just give me a moment while I'm still trying to bring up my slide at the moment. All right, just one more moment to do that. Yes, so I hope my slide can be seen as it is now. Moderator, can you please confirm that you can see my slide?
Yes, please.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much. So very quickly, as I mentioned, the presentation is direct and poignant in that it addresses specifically the opportunities, the risks, and innovations in commodities trading with a perspective of the new Investments and Securities Act 2025 and its implications for the market. So as an outline, we'll quickly look at primarily, just to simplify, the concept of commodities trading, a quick historical background around it. We'd also look at, as far as the Nigerian perspective is concerned, how far back do we date or do we carbon date commodities trading in Nigeria per se, as far as also the exchanges are concerned as well. We'd look at the relevant ISA provisions, many of which have been extensively and succinctly taken by the former presenter with an excellent approach to that. So I don't want to belabor you by repeating some of those provisions, but I might make one or two references to some of them just for the purpose of emphasis or to draw out a very important point. We'll also look at the opportunities that are available, that are identifiable as a result of the emergence of the Act and what that portends for the commodities markets from a Nigerian perspective. Then we'll also take a stab at what the identifiable risk of perhaps, if you may, limitations to as far as that's the new provisions of the Act is concerned. We would also look at the innovations and trends that are applicable. And lastly, we'll just take a summation of the entire presentation, while I then wait to take very interactive and engaging questions and comments on that. Thank you. So as far as the background is concerned, now, historically speaking, commodities trading is something that has driven empires, that has over centuries and ages been a very considerable part of human existence. For students of history, if you were to go back in time and take a visit down towards the annals of history to the Byzantine, the Ottoman eras, these were times when exchange of goods such as spices, textiles, and precious metals, gold, for instance. So we'll still come down to that from the LCFE perspective. Some of us on this particular webinar might be aware that the LCFE has a traded gold coin called the Eco Gold. But back then, even before formalized exchanges were structured, a lot of transactions of that nature happened more or less OTC, over the counter, and there were trades. So that's as far back as the era of the history of commodities trading dates back. And this has also helped across time to build and to fuel economies as well, which is why it's important that if Nigeria desires to have an economy that is stable beyond the drawbacks of the limitations of petroleum or crude oil and a monopolized economy, we might have to pay more significant attention to the potentials inherent in commodities trading as a whole. Moving on, as far as Nigeria is concerned, the trading of commodities, again, from a Nigerian perspective, is across centuries. As early as the 1800s, the Royal Niger Company, again, was a very key critical part of the journey because it was a trading company that practically traded commodities. However, I mean, there was the missing link of the structured, formalized exchange platform. And over time, pre-independence Nigeria was known to be a very, very key power player in certain commodities such as cocoa in the southwest, if you may, palm oil in the south as well, and the grain pyramids of the north. Those are also examples of commodities which are pivotal and were also very critical to shaping and defining the Nigerian economy and laying the foundation for modern Nigeria. That said, we then take a journey slowly down towards the exchange scenario and the exchange reality that as a structured and a formalized trading front for commodities. Now, the LCFE, which thankfully put together this entire webinar, is known as a notable commodities exchange in Nigeria. and that's it's obtained its license in 2019 and officially launched in 2022 or thereabouts. And it is, as has been introduced early at the beginning of this session, that it trades several notable commodities, including about 12 registered ones. And notably, it also is the first exchange in Nigeria to trade gold contracts that are backed by physical gold. This is a very unique achievement in that, as far as exchanges go all over the world, the trade of gold is a substantial part of what drives the volume of trade on the exchange. So it is indeed a very commendable measure that the LCFE has taken this gigantic measure to more or less position itself as a leader in the commodities exchange space. Now, sometime you'll see a link here. Sometime in 2022, myself and a then colleague of mine, Mr. Sami Iwe, had calls to write at that time on a very nascent topic, and that was on the issue around the very lean, or if you may, thin regulatory framework around the commodities exchange space in Nigeria, and with a careful beam light on the LCFE. The article link is over there, and in that article we extensively discussed what we perceive to be the limitations that the LCFE and other exchanges might face in that regard. Thankfully now, with the emergence of the ISA and its provisions that have been extended over a period of time, explained by the last presenter, we now know that that regulatory framework has been strengthened, has been properly defined, such that the commodities trading ecosystem in Nigeria has been made to be one that is solid, properly defined, and properly regulated, thankfully. So other notable commodities exchange in Nigeria also include the NCEX, that's Nigerian Commodities Exchange, and the FX, that's the FX Commodities Exchange as is known as well. Just moving forward a bit more, one of the very fantastic things that the last presenter did was also to refer to the definition of commodities as per the ISA. Now, thankfully, the definition in the ISA, which we explored earlier, has substantially created a broader framework for what constitutes commodities. However, just to simplify it from a more or less a layman perspective, right? Because I'm aware that there are other persons on this space who might not be legally savvy. However, commodities typically, we refer to goods that are interchangeable with goods of the same type. Practically, that can refer to anything from food items, natural resources, such metals such as gold, silver, and these are tradable commodities. These are tradable materials that can then be exchanged for value. An exchange of value can take place on that basis. Now, relatively speaking, the question then is, why are commodities vital, or why is it important to even have a trading system for commodities? And the first and simple answer is that commodities are practically an integral part of our everyday lives. Where we go, these are materials, these are things that we see on a daily basis. So trading them enables, there's an almost endless supply of commodities. Agricultural materials, for instance, these are pivotal to the economy of a nation. They are also substantially important for food security as well. So a trading system that enables this is vital, and that's why the exchange to formalize the trading of commodities and futures as well is very vital, which is also why the ISA's regulatory framework, as has been designed now, is commendable and is very important. Additionally, commodities can also be used to diversify investment portfolios. We know that traditional securities such as stock and debt instrument and all of that are oftentimes the more popularly known traditional security instruments. However, the nature of commodities mean that they are less prone to market volatility. So if the intent is to have an instrument that is tradable, that has a high form of security, as a less volatility approach, then commodities are very important in that regard. And we could also move on to extensively talk about the relevant ISA provisions, part of which has already been discussed. The distinguishing factor between what constitutes composite and non-composite exchange. Notably to mention is that the LCFE by its very nature, is more of a non-composite exchange, because it practically trades in commodities alone, not just practically all asset classes. However, additionally, the commodities exchange, this definition is vital for me, because there's a limit as to what type of a market player can then be regarded to as an exchange for commodities. And the definition simply states that it excludes electronic facility that merely provide price or other information relating to commodity contract, which means that before a market player who lists securities as aware can be regarded as a commodity exchange, the mere provision of just information alone. So we've had certain innovations around quoting price and also providing information relating to commodities. However, such platforms where they do not provide a platform to actually trade or for actual operation of trading in commodities, then such by the act are limited and are not codified under that definition of what a commodity exchange means. Additionally, just as an overview of what we've already heard from the former speaker regarding those notable provisions of the ISA, there's a mandatory registration of the exchanges, commodity exchanges, and then brokers and warehouses. The SEC now has wide regulatory powers to be able to mandate these registrations. There's also the use of legal entity identifiers, the LIEs, which is also made vital and mandatory for capital market participants. This is vital because prior to that, to the emergence of the ISA 2025, this provision was not mandatory as well. So it is a new innovation that is driven towards ensuring that there's a more structured framework that provides security of investments and also builds investor confidence. And this strengthened enforcement and compliance powers that the SEC now has, indirectly, as I may like to put it, will lead to more, as the CEO earlier put it, it is hoped that this framework will automatically then trigger more liquidity and financial stability within the market system for the commodities trading in Nigeria. Part of the reports that have been read sort of estimate that by 2030, the commodities markets in Nigeria is supposed to be what, in terms of the volume of trade that is being projected, at least over half $500 billion in that. Now, the visibility of that is shrouded in some uncertainties. However, given this enabling environment that the ISA via its provisions has created, and also given the emergence of frameworks and exchanges like the SOFE who have taken it upon themselves to lead the market race, if you allow me to put it that way, it is believed that these can become realities. Of course, it is one to project it in order for that to be reality. As some like to say, it's man proposes, God disposes. But where frameworks are in place, then visions can become reality. There's also the need for a formalized structure around digital assets as well. Now, moving on, the opportunities of the ISA, very quickly, we've touched excessively on the comprehensive regulatory framework, which enhances the trading ecosystem. Now, what this has done is that it has then built a clear framework. In that article that I referenced, that was written in 2020, part of what we had touched 2022 or touched on was to say that there was a need for a very formalized and proper framework around that, and that the SEC had to take its place as the primary regulator as they had done, but to also ensure that these legal enablers are put into place. And thankfully, this has emerged, and this is manifested by the new act, the new ISA as well. Now, additionally, this also will help to enhance investor confidence, because there are provisions in the ISA that directly mandates the exchanges, for instance, to follow transparency procedures towards the appointment of the MD and the CEO and other frameworks around that. This will also, price discovery was extensively mentioned by the former speaker. I think this is also important because this will also help to build fair competition among the exchanges. I mentioned earlier that there are, apart from the LCFE, there are about two other notable commodities exchanges in Nigeria right now. So what will happen is that there's going to be an incursion into the market of new players to be able to strengthen a fair competition, which will help to improve the overall commodities trading ecosystem as well. Standardization of that, of course, by enabling competition, that would also help that standards are maintained, and also a reduction in market manipulation through a clearly defined framework. Now, where rules are not clear, there's clearly room for manipulation. But where rules are clear, they have been codified, and as they have been presented in the new ISA, then there's very little margin for manipulation of the market per se in itself. All right, moving on. Now, the identifiable risk or limitation as far as the provisions are concerned. Now, there's a question of compliance costs, and I mean, in terms of smallholder participants. Now, the question is, what if I happen to be a quite very limited participant who does not have the financial wherewithal or the structural framework to put up a structured exchange, commodity exchange in that sense? And I mean, that was a question I had. Someone asked me prior to this, and I think the simple answer to that is the codification of exchanges on a definite measure does not still preclude the OTC transactions that will continue to happen every day, day-to-day transactions. However, when the scale is large enough in that regard, then it will be better for that to be channeled through the exchange platform to be able to for boosts of the economy, and also to ensure that the frameworks that are in place are properly applied, and that process is enabled in that. There's also the question of, we talked about warehouse tracking earlier. Yeah. Now, the question then is, what is the enabling technology? I think the question was asked around that. And I believe that's an important question as well, because the digital limitations of the provisions as well in the Act is clear. However, this is, for me, this is not much a risk. It is an opportunity for technological innovation and drives in that means to be able to be created. Of course, the Act in itself has been passed. However, for every Act that has been passed, there are also policy frameworks that emerge after to be able to enable those provisions to efficiently and effectively work, which is why that implementation gap that is missing can be filled. There's also the risk of regulatory overlap, and a bit of that was touched on again by the earlier speaker, and that's nexus among the subnational players, and then this collaborative approach with the FCC is very important, because knowing that, for instance, when it comes to commodities trading, primarily one of the fundamental commodities traded in the agricultural sector, and that's across board, that cuts across subnational levels. So this interwoven nature of that relationship has to be maintained, and that approach is vital to ensuring that commodities trading in Nigeria is made to be a very vital part of the economy, and drives and trades in that regard boosts economic growth. So as far as rounding up now, I'm sure so we talk quickly about innovations and future trends. Primarily, thankfully, the emergence of the ISA 2025 has helped. So as far as those provisions are concerned, there's an increment of innovation in financial products, and innovative ones at that. There was a remark regarding how now digital assets such as cryptocurrencies are now deemed to fall within the definition of commodities, which is a much welcome development, because the position of the law around that was shrouded in certain limitations, but this is a clear, defined approach that now makes it clear and substantially important to be able to define how, going forward, the trades around that are handled. Now, there's also the question of ESG considerations. That was also touched on again by the former speaker. Now, the ESG considerations are not just a very substantial part of financing considerations. They are also vital given the approach around modern finance and capital market transactions. The need for investors and also market issuers, for instance, to clearly consider this in all their approaches. And thankfully, while there were no clearly defined provisions that address this, well, I'm sure that the existing regulatory framework around that is helpful enough, and if expanded, can also address this to a much substantial level. There was also the mention of the warehouse receipt system, which is a much welcome innovation and is now recognized by the ISA, which is more or less a structured framework around how securities that are considered as commodities can be properly defined, and that trade can be efficiently done in that regards. There's also, we could go around digitalization of commodity trading platforms. Thankfully, the LCFE, for instance, digitalizes a lot of its processes, and it is commendable in that regard. What must be done around a building and infrastructural framework that is practically digital driven, as opposed to the previous approach of the interwoven nature of both the digital approach and the manual framework around that. So additionally, there's also a balance between inclusiveness of that technology that will drive that exchange to be able to be more productive for commodities trading in Nigeria, as vis-a-vis the need to maintain that framework that the ISA provides and compliance in that regard. All right, so in terms of risk and gaps, I touched on that already. There's a need to either reduce substantially or completely even eliminate the price control interferences. Now, there's a limitation to that, which is then the social influence question of to what extent should the government, for instance, the FCCPC, go to ensure that there's a protection mechanism for consumers. However, if the intent is to drive a natural order of supply and demand, then there has to be a substantial limit to the influence or the control that can be exercised by governments or regulatory forces in that regard. Additionally, I've talked on the mechanisms or the measures to control quality. Now, that's standardized procedure that the ISA provides for exchanges across bodies is important in that regard, because it then means that there's a singular framework that all players in the exchange sector, in the commodities exchange sector, must comply with. And this will also enable that there are standards as opposed to individual templates that different players can come up with. One single uniform approach to it is important, and this has been well addressed by the ISA, thankfully. So on a final note, I'd like to say that the implications of the emergence of the provisions of the ISA have been important in many regards. They've helped to substantially address the inconsistencies, as there were, around the regulatory framework. They've also substantially helped to create an enabling environment and a policy definitive measure that will help to project commodities trade in the ecosystem in Nigeria about what it is today, and to strengthen such players such as the LCFE and other exchanges, commodity exchange, to be able to reach their full potential and boost the Nigerian economy. Once again, I want to thank the LCFE for the invitation, and also thank the first speaker who did a very, very excellent job in the review of the provisions of the Act extensively. And also thank you to the listeners who have taken their time to listen through this. And it's time to step aside and listen to your questions or comments. Thank you very much once again. Grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for the insightful section, Peter Cole. You have captured the essence of the discussions perfectly. The importance of commodities and commodities trading cannot be overemphasized. It remains a critical pillar for Nigeria's economic growth and development, of which you've stated. I'm confident that the participants found the session both engaging and informative. So at this point, we'll be moving into the question and answer segments. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. Thank you.
Where's Jude?
All right, moderator, there's a comment I'd like to just address, if I may.
Sure, please go ahead.
All right, yeah, thank you very much. So there's a comment here regarding the slides. I'm sure it was mentioned earlier that the slides will be shared. Of course, I'd be open to sharing them personally as well, if required by anyone. Yeah, but thank you. That was mentioned earlier. And I don't know if Ms. Mabel is back on the call to take that question, or I could just take a stab at the questions that were asked earlier.
I don't know if you can hear me. Peter, thank you so much, and I'm grateful.
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Comments.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Yeah,
your kind comments. Ademola Akinlo Shea says, how practicable are the enforcement mechanisms, especially with respect to individuals who trade digital assets? When it comes to enforcement, I earlier on mentioned that the SEC has powers now to prosecute. Recall that with the regime in place, you would only be able to trade on virtual assets on a registered exchange. There'll be a registered exchange for trading of these virtual assets. So there are legal entity identifiers, and there's a normal KYC, your customers that are obtainable on these exchanges. So I know that the framework is in place, and to the nitty-gritty how this will be enforceable, we will see the rules, but I know that the SEC has powers now to enforce this. I hope that answers your question. Peter, you may like to also make an intervention if you want to.
Yes, I think you already gave a very well-rounded answer to that question. Just to add that as far as individuals who trade, I think we're talking about a bit of users who by themselves trade cryptocurrencies or digital assets. The SEC primarily, what the SEC has done via the SEC is to create a regulatory framework that directly addresses the trading of these digital assets on exchanges who are mandated to register and to be able to list these assets per se. Now, so as an individual to be able to then trade these digital assets going forward, it would then have to be that you are coming via the approach of doing that on a registered exchange for that purpose. Otherwise, the previous B2B approach where it was user-to-user trades before the emergence of the apps that then finally defines it would become a thing of the past. So you have to go through the exchange who must be regulated, who must be licensed, who must be in compliance with the frameworks that the SEC via the ISA and other regulations in mixing that regards.
Thank you. I don't know if I was heard when I answered the question by Aderemi. Thank you. Says, what is the framework? What framework do we have to ascertain and authenticate warehouse receipts to be traded? Whatever frameworks that are lacking at the moment, the ISA envisages that policies will be made. But then within the warehouse, if I recall correctly, there's an electronic system in place that should be on the exchange. The commodities exchange will have an electronic system, and so I'm sure it's verifiable, and that will be something that will be worked out from the warehouse. If we look, for instance, with what we have in the equities market, the CSCS, how do you ascertain instruments, for instance? They're electronically traded. And I see a situation where even some of the warehouse receipts would also be electronically traded, such that they are dematerialized. So as the market deepens, the warehouse receipts that are tradable, if I recall correctly, there's something within the rules, the SEC rules. I know we averted our minds in one of the opinions that we did at some point in one of those transactions. And in one of the deals, the transaction was meant to be electronically traded. So I really do not foresee instances where people will go with physically warehouse receipts. So because we have FMIs already in place, those receipts also will be dematerialized and to enable trading on the exchange. So that in itself, there are rules, there are existing rules already in place. So the ISA, what it does is to support and ensures that the framework in place functions efficiently without having to displace the existing rules that we have. I guess that answers that question. Okay. How is the Act expected to influence participation of foreign investors in the Nigerian commodities ecosystem? Good question. I recall when I was reading the Act, there's a place, and if you just allow me, where it talks about either the securities and it contemplates other jurisdictions also. I'm not sure if it was traded instruments or if it was with respect to commodities, but it recognizes other jurisdictions as well for purposes of commodities trade. That's on the one hand. But on another hand, in a market where there is fairness, where there is transparency, it boosts investor confidence. I'd always thought, like I expressed my views at the last SBL on the platform when we're considering how the capital market has helped the economic growth within the country, that investors' confidence will always be boosted where we have regulations that are adequate and that are working. And one second, I think is the commodities, the system, the electronic system. Commodity exchange definition. Yes, the commodity exchange definition. It says it's a market, whether in Nigeria or in any other jurisdiction, registered or recognized by the Commission for commodities contracts and are regularly made or traded. It's something that we will unpack as we go along, but somehow that market is a cross-border market. From my understanding of it, this is not my firm's opinion, nor is it the CMSA's opinion, but on a literal look, meaning of the words used for the definition of the commodities exchange, I see here that it contemplates foreign jurisdictions registered and it's recognized by the Commission, and there'll be trading of contracts and that are foreign, So I think to that extent, the Act envisages that we will have foreign investments within the Nigerian commodities ecosystem from the mere definition of what a commodities exchange is. And there are other ways as well through our warehouse receipts and the trading that would occur in the market also. I think from my end, the way I say it, the recognition of the commodities ecosystem within the ISA has created that framework, and it's somehow robust and will allow for trade across borders. If the definition of what a storehouse is includes a vessel also, it then tells you what the mind of our exchange is. And particularly, I made reference to the capital market revised plan and the objective to ensure that the commodities market is deepened within our economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the engaging question and answer session. You've done justification to this segment. So on this note, I would like us to please follow our social media pages. You'll find them in the chat box. Also, our weekly commodities index, which tracks commodities performance globally and domestically, is sent out every week. If interested, please drop your email in the chat box and we would add you to our contact list. So on that note, I would invite my CFO to take the closing remark.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's been a very insightful session, and I believe that our knowledge has been enriched. So I would like to extend my gratitude to everyone who contributed to the success of this webinar themed Navigating the Future of Commodities Trading, Understanding the Investment and Securities Act role in shaping the commodities ecosystem. We've had wonderful presentations from both Mabel and Peter Cole. They've given us the details of what is contained in the Act, and I know as Nigerians, we may not have the time to actually sit down and start reading through any act of that nature. But with what we have today, they've been able to break everything down for us. And for that, our eyes have been opened to the opportunities that the Act has created, among which I can just mention some. Before now, people, yes, commodity trading has been going on informally. And for that, no numbers were captured, no data, and all those things. But now, out of the Act, I've seen some opportunities created for all of us here. The Act, in the commodity ecosystem, you have a good number of participants. And for that, as listeners in this educative seminar, I can see that a role of a collateral manager comes out of this Act. So any of us here can decide to pick up and engage ourselves in the business of a collateral manager or collateral management. Warehousing, because the main object of the Act is to give credence to the issue of warehouse certificate for commodities. So it's an opportunity for all the participants here to look at, do I want to have a warehouse where I can put it to a standard that I can be generating warehouse receipts? So this is another opportunity that we can look at and see whether we can tap into. Logistic companies, no commodities business will be done without having logistics moving the commodities around. So this is another aspect that all of us can look at and see whether we can participate. So the seminar is such very rich, and I believe it's a value adding session that we have had. So for that, I want to once again, on behalf of the management of this exchange, appreciate the wonderful presentations we had from Mabel and Peter Cole. We thank you so much for breaking this act down and your experience and guide in this discussion. So we thank you very much. Your insightful contributions here and thought-provoking questions for all the participants have enriched our understanding of this critical topic. Special thanks again to the speakers for sharing their expertise and to the organizers for the meticulous planning of this seminar. I pray that the knowledge shared today will guide us in navigating the evolving commodities market landscape. And in conclusion, as we look to the future of commodities trading, it is clear that the Investments and Securities Act 2025 will play a pivotal role in shaping the industry. Let us all harness the insights gained here today to drive innovation, foster collaboration, and build a more robust and efficient commodities ecosystem. Together, we can navigate the complexities of this dynamic market and unlock new opportunities for growth and success. I once again thank you all, and I wish you all a productive and insightful future in the commodity trading ecosystem. God bless you all. We will encourage you that this kind of upcoming seminars like this will come up. We'll be sending out invitations, and we will appreciate if people, at the point I saw a number close to 125 participants here on the call. That's very encouraging. We don't take it for granted. Everything is costly today in Nigeria. Even using data is very expensive. But you have all kept to this, and you have given us your time and day for this. So we thank you all for this engagement. All of us here, I say, have a very good evening and a restful night. Thank you and God bless.
very reliable with credibility.
Welcome to the Lagos Commodities and Futures Exchange, your trusted partner in the commodities market. Let's take you on a journey to learn more about us. Come with me.
LCF is a fully licensed commodities exchange regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission to facilitate the trading of the 4 asset classes, which are agricultural commodities, solid minerals, oil and gas, and currency.
LCFE is not just a trading platform. We are an exchange. We drive the Nigerian economy and the commodities ecosystem. What we do is to stimulate and catalyze sustainable growth in Nigeria, West Africa, and the whole of Africa. We support innovation, sustainable financing, and investment for stakeholders and investors of the commodities ecosystem.
LCFE provides access to global markets for commodity traders. LCFE ensures that the commodities that trade on the floor are quality, of good standard, and are certified across all asset classes. LCFE ensures and provides access to capital market financing for commodity activities. LCFE provides and ensures that there are diverse investment opportunities locally, internationally, regionally, across the commodities ecosystem.
We have 14 approved commodities by the Securities and Exchange Commission, bringing us to 2 of our key products, the Eco Gold Coin and Eco Rice.
The Eco Gold Coin is the first physical gold asset to be listed and traded on any exchange in Nigeria. It was mined in Osun State, and July 2022 it was launched by the Governor of Lagos State himself, His Excellency Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, at 42,500 naira per gram. And guess what? It is currently trading at 98,000 naira per gram. That is a whopping 130.59% ROI for early and smart investors.
Eco Rice is an investment-backed commodity contract backed by a partnership between LCFE and the Lagos State government to enhance local rice production, boost food security, and drive economic sustainability.
These 2 products are just a fraction of the SEC-approved investment opportunities on LCFE.
Now come with me as I take you to explore our departments and introduce you to our dedicated professionals that ensures dedicated and seamless trading for you. Remember, we talk about Eco Rice. Now, I know some of you are wondering where and how to redeem your Eco Rice contract after trading on the floor of the exchange. If you purchase your Eco Rice contract and you are wondering how to pick up, here is one of our redemption centers where you can conveniently pick up your Eco Rice at the heart of TMS Marina, Lagos State. Displayed on the screen are some of our other recognized redemption centers that you can pick up your Eco Rice contract.
And that is not all. Are you a warehouse owner, a logistic company, an aggregator, exporter or importer of all kinds of commodity, a vault owner, capital market operator, commodity refining or processing company? There is room for partnership and collaboration with LCFE.
To contact us, visit our website lcfe.ng or call the numbers displayed on the screen. You can also send an email to info@lcfe.ng. At LCFE, we don't just trade commodities. We create opportunities, drive growth, and empower investors.
So when you trade with LCFE, you trade smart.
And you gain global access to boundless opportunities
that transforms commodities into wealth,
thereby making LCFE your gateway to certified commodity and capital market financing.
So when next you think about LCFE, don't forget it is the home of commodities. You've probably come across terms like commodities, commodities trading, commodity exchange, and brokers. And you thought to yourself, this sounds complicated. So you didn't even bother to learn more about it. But don't worry, this video will break it down for you in the simplest way possible. A
commodity is a raw material or primary agricultural product that can be bought and sold. So think of things like gold, crude oil, cocoa, or grains. Commodities are essential to our global economy. An exchange is simply a marketplace where people buy and sell assets like currencies, oil and gas, solid minerals, and agricultural commodities. It is a regulated environment that ensures transparency in price and fair trading. Now, a commodity exchange is a special marketplace where commodities are traded. It helps set fair prices, reduces risks for producers and buyers, and ensures a stable supply chain. The Lagos Commodities and Futures Exchange is a go-to place for trading commodities. LCFE connects investors, farmers, and traders, creating a structured and transparent marketplace for everyone involved. A broker is someone who helps buyers and sellers complete their transaction in financial markets. They act as middlemen, ensuring you get the best deals on the exchange. A commodity broker is a professional who helps traders and investors buy and sell commodities like oil, gold, or cocoa on the exchange. They provide expert advice and ensure trade is done efficiently. LCFE is changing the game for Nigerian investors, farmers, and businesses. So whether you are a farmer looking for better prices, and investors looking to grow your wealth, and a trader looking for better opportunities, LCFE provides a secure and transparent marketplace for you. Now that you understand commodity exchanges, why not take the next step? Visit LCFE website today or follow us on social media to start your investment journey. Your future in commodities starts now.
You all very much for joining us this morning. Believe me, it is an important milestone in the success journey of the Lagos State government, and in particular with the Lagos Commodities and Futures Exchange.
We are here because we understand how important a strong and effective power sector is to boosting the economy, improving people's quality of life, and guaranteeing our state's sustainability. Lagos, the financial hub of Nigeria, the economic hub of Nigeria, deserves a top-notch energy market that can accommodate the expanding needs of its citizens.
The theme of today's event is not just timely, but is essential to our development agenda. Nigeria's electricity sector holds vast potential, yet unlocking its full capacity requires a fundamental shift in financing, governance, and investment structures. The capital market is ready and really eager to play a central role in this transformation, providing long-term financing and stability.
The vision of the market is basically to ensure everyone that is within the city boundaries have energy that they require to empower their living, livelihood, business, whatever it is they need energy for, sustainably.
Being here today means that we are trying to say that is it possible for us to build a state, a city, a country where we have power. The theme of today's gathering, which is building a competitive electricity marketplace, strategies to attract investment and boost confidence in the Lagos electricity market using capital market, I think is very timely and very essential as we continue our collective journey towards a more sustainable and resilient energy sector. We have 27 general hospitals and 1 tertiary, which is LASUT. In terms of expenditure, power is 45%. So if you can get that down, you can spend more money on actually treating people.
Gentlemen, we're going to be looking at the law, the opportunities that's presented, and how best our market participants can make the best out of it.
The market is so shallow that if there is a major need for fund in this country, if 2 states are going to the market at the same time, it cannot happen. It's similar to our banking sector, where 2 deals cannot happen at the same time because all of them have syndicated just for one. So the market needs to be encouraged to be creative actually in the instruments, particularly the debt instruments that comes to market.
We might not know, but there's pent-up quiet demand of over 60 years on people that have always wanted to invest in power in Nigeria, and they want to invest in structured products that are fungible and that are from institutions that are very, very reliable with credibility.